Derek Gilbert in Jerusalem with a special report for Skywatch TV. I apologize for the lack of updates for the last week and a half or so. We have been on a 2025 Israel tour, Sharon and me, leading an intrepid group of about 30 travelers from around the world, including people from Germany, Scotland, United Kingdom, Australia, and of course here in the United States. As we've traveled north to south across Israel, we have been, thanks to Lipkin Tours, at some places that other tours just don't go. We've seen many of the sites that people want to see. The Nazareth village, which is a recreation of the first century village in which Jesus grew up. We were out on the Sea of Galilee. We did baptisms and praise and worship in the Jordan River. But we also went to Gilgal Rephaim, called Israel's Stonehenge, a megalithic site that is about 12,000 years older, 1,200 years older, and just an order of magnitude more stone than Stonehenge in England. An estimated 42 to 60,000 tons of stone in Gilgal Rephaim compared to 2,500 for Stonehenge, and dated to the Copper Age, the Chalcolithic period, which again is about 1,200 years older than Stonehenge. So why is it there? Why is it built in that particular shape? Why spend so much time and effort on the construction? It's related to the cult of the dead, which was sort of a theme of our tour as we visited sites that are significant to the supernatural struggle in which we as Christians find ourselves today. That included, of course, Jerusalem. And as you can hear behind me, emergency vehicles going past. We'll talk more about what's the situation in Jerusalem, this morning in just a moment. But of course, we visited the Temple Mount, which is where all of this will come to a conclusion at the Battle of Armageddon. We looked down on the Mount of Olives from Mount Scopus, and then we visited a couple of sites in the south that were victimized, that were attacked on October 7th of 2023. The city of Sderot, where the police station was overrun, and in the city itself, where 70 people were killed that day. We also visited the site of the Nova Music Festival, where some 364 Israelis were killed and dozens more were captured and taken back to Gaza. It was rather sobering, but it's a reminder that this long supernatural conflict between the forces of darkness and the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, made manifest in the person of Jesus of Nazareth, is continuing to this very day. While we were here this past week and a half, Hamas has, of course, delayed the release of the remains of the final hostages still in Gaza. In fact, trying to extend the deadline for its return, or for their return, of all the remaining Israelis, sending back a body part from a hostage already returned and buried. And the horror that this must have caused the parents, who had to reopen the casket of their deceased son to bury another piece of him returned, and Hamas trying to pass that off as the remains of another hostage. What happens between Israel and Hamas at this point is still open for guesses. I honestly could not tell you at this point, but it is clear that Hamas has no intention of relinquishing power in the Gaza Strip. To that end, Israel has been mobilizing a large percentage of its population. At times, up to 10% of the population of Israel has been mobilized. Imagine if that were the United States. We would be talking about 37 million people serving in one capacity or another in the armed forces. That's what Israel has been enduring for the last 2 years. To that end, there's been a move to draft the ultra-Orthodox, or the Haredim, who to this point have been exempt from mandatory military service. There are some military units of Haredim volunteers, but for the most part, young Haredim, men and women, do not have to serve in the military, which is required for everyone else in Israel. This is causing some stresses on Israeli society, as both secularists and religious Jews who serve, Orthodox as opposed to ultra-Orthodox, are looking at the Haredim and saying, hey, look, this war is affecting all of us. Why are you not participating in this conflict? And today, as we're recording this on October, I've got to check what day it is because the days run together after a while, October 30th of 2025, there is planned a massive protest here in Jerusalem by opponents, by the ultra-Orthodox, who do not want to see their young men and women drafted into the military, the young men in particular. And some of the routes between here and Tel Aviv, where we will need to catch our flight to return back to the United States, will be closed because of the protest. They're expecting up to 1 million people here in Jerusalem for these protests today. So while Israel, as you can hear in the background behind me, for the most part has returned to a sense of normality, the fact is society is still struggling with the ongoing conflict and how to resolve it between Israel and Hamas. Now, what is happening in the United States? President Trump reportedly this morning has issued an order to the Pentagon to resume testing of nuclear weapons for the first time in more than 30 years. He did this just ahead of a meeting with China's President Xi, and after the meeting, President Trump declaring that President Xi has agreed to loosen its restrictions on the export of rare earth metals, which are, of course, needed for the production of sensitive military equipment, electronics in particular, but even consumer electronic equipment like the one I'm using to record this program for you this morning. So hopefully things will resolve there because China does have a monopoly on many critical rare earths. As we told you a couple of weeks ago, President Trump directing the United States government to directly invest in mining operations. But that will take time to develop the mining and then the refining needed to free the United States from its dependence on China for those rare earth minerals. So those are some key things happening here in Israel and back in the United States. A bit of a surprise related to what we're seeing here in Israel is the support from Jews in New York City for the Democratic nominee for mayor there, Zohran Mamdani, who's made no secret of his pro-Palestinian views. Most prominent recently, the actor Mandy Patinkin, a Jewish actor who came out in support of Mamdani. And I think when you're looking at from a secular viewpoint, you see everything as politics in the natural realm. There are things that Mamdani is saying that would be appealing to some people. Government paying for everything. Well, who doesn't want to be freed from pay? But there is no free lunch because the government gets its money from somewhere. Here's the thing, though. Mamdani represents the pleasant face put forward by Islam. And when Islam gets into a position of control, then the mask drops. This is historically documented. I am not being paranoid here. I'm basing this on reading of the 1400-year history of relations between Islam and the rest of the world. Israel happens to be on the front lines of this conflict, although it is coming and has already arrived in many parts of Europe and the United Kingdom, where, as we record this morning, news emerged of a fatal stabbing by an Afghan migrant in England, a Muslim, who fatally stabbed a man out walking his dog in Uxbridge, a suburb on the west side of London. There's a famous line from The Lord of the Rings where Aragorn tells King Theoden of Rohan, "War is upon you, whether you wish it or no." And sadly, that is the case with the rest of the world. This is not just Christians and Jews, but Hindus, Buddhists, Zoroastrians, secularists. Islam ultimately has as its goal the conquest of the world. And Israel is just the most obvious flashpoint in this long-running war. We will be back home, God willing, over the weekend and then returning to our regular 5 and 10 schedule on Monday. I thank you for your patience and indulgence while Sharon and I have led this group through Israel. And until then, thank you for watching as we keep watch. I'm Derek Gilbert with a special report from Skywatch TV.